I'm Jazz Tankay, Senior Artisans Editor. Variety, how much fun was Zootopia 2? Oh my God, it was so good to see Julie and Nick back. Thank you all so much for coming out on this Sunday morning. I am so excited to be here with director Byron Howard, producer Yvette Merino, and writer and director Jared Bush. We're going to ask all the questions, all the burning questions today.
Hello. Thank you guys for coming out. It's great to see beautiful people. That's awesome.
Hey, everybody. This is ears. Nice.
The ears, the bunny ears, the fox ears. I want to say thank you on behalf of this audience because I'm so grateful that Zootopia is back. Our favorite characters are back. I feel like we've waited 9 years. I know some of the kids haven't waited 9 years, but it's so great that they're back. Can we just say this movie is now tracking for 525 million and more globally, worldwide? So congratulations to you all. Did you ever think we'd be here in 2025 talking Zootopia 2? I mean, I've been waiting for a long time, but
You want to jump in?
go for it, Byron.
Oh, sure. I mean, honestly, Jared and I first met 14 years ago, right after Tangled. And
He hired me, is how that
That's
worked
right.
out.
You're welcome. And Yvette and I had just finished Tangled together. That was the first time we had worked together, but Jared and I met on that first film. And we really got to start from a blank page. And we started with a bunch of research about animals and city building and craziness like that. And that first show with these animal characters was such a ride. We knew that we could never possibly get everything into one film. And so to come back almost a decade later is pretty crazy, because the last film the three of us worked on together as directors and producers was Encanto. And Encanto, one of the reasons I love seeing you guys here is that was done during the pandemic, when all of us were shut away from each other and we were doing the whole movie over Zoom. So to hear you guys in one room laughing and sniffling and getting shocked, like people getting shocked at the stabbing and the carrot, is a great feeling. But it's wonderful. Honestly, it's such a fun playground for us and our crew, and there are about 750 plus people who couldn't be here today on the stage that we worked with to get the film done.
Can we give a shout out to all the animators that worked on this film to bring
Yes,
us So I'm going to ask you right away, a lot of people have snake phobias. Who of you decided that we're going to look at a snake and we're going to make that the friendliest, most loved? How many of you loved Gary the Snake, right? To make that, the character, one of the main characters in Zootopia 2.
I'll tell it, I just talked, but I'll do this is where I usually tell this little story about Jared, because he's very modest. But right as we were finishing Encanto about 4.5 years ago, Jared tapped me on the shoulder and he had a little story pad, which is a tiny piece of paper, and he had drawn Zootopia 2. And the 2, even back then, was already a snake. And so Gary was sort of already born in Jared's mind, and he was thinking about the world of reptiles and as a way in.
It's true. What you guys also need to know is that I'm the worst artist on the planet, so the only thing I can draw is a snake. That was the extent of my artistic abilities. That's true. I'd say early on, 14 years ago, we started to build out this world, and in the first film, we talked about this dynamic between predator and prey. That's a very clear line in the mammal world. It's not a clear line in the reptile world. That's one of the big reasons you didn't see reptiles in the first film, because we really wanted to focus on that predator-prey dynamic. But what was great is, even back then, Byron and I really talked about, well, there's reptiles out there somewhere. This is we've seen one city of mammals, but that's one city on one continent in this entire world of animals. And so the idea that we bring reptiles in the story very early on, we knew that would be the real push in this film. I think the big thing is we wanted to make sure that Judy and Nick were at the very center of the story. This is really about their differences, and we wanted to mirror their differences with the mystery and the differences between mammals and reptiles. And a real joy for me in having Gary be such a main character is that Yvette is terrified of snakes so much that when we did research, she would stand on the other side of the room. That's true. And so there's also a little bit of torture that I got to enjoy that as well.
Talk about that, Yvette. When they say, we're going to make Gary the Snake a character, which means research.
I know, at Disney Animation, we love research, and we do a lot of research, and we bring animals in, and we talked about snakes, and I was like, just let me know when the snake is coming in, and I will stay home. I've tried over this the course of this film to try to get over this fear, but it's very difficult. But I do love, a lot of credit goes to our amazing design team and character team and our animators, because Gary the Snake is one of my favorite characters, and I still don't like snakes, but I love Gary.
I mean, we love Gary, and Kiki Quan was the voice. I want to talk a little about the voice characters, because you obviously expanded, you know, we've got a ton of new characters, new voice actors. How do you find the right the right actors to voice these characters, given we've already established, like, we've got people who we love from the first film, like,
it's one of the most fun things, honestly. I think one of the real benefits that we have is that usually when we're trying to marry a character with an actor, typically we just want that actor to just be themselves. And I think for this movie, obviously we have these established characters we're bringing back from the first film, but knowing that in the second film we wanted to put pressure on our existing characters, that's where it makes a lot of sense to bring in Gary, who's voiced by Key, because Gary, we say he's even more Judy than Judy is. He's this incredibly optimistic character, and we actually wanted someone to hold up a mirror to her optimism and see how she'd do. Likewise, with Fortune Feimster playing Nibbles, who's ridiculous. You know, she's a chaos agent. She knows parts of Zootopia better than Nick does. In the first film, Nick knew the town really well, so he could be the ambassador to the town for Judy. And now Nibbles being there, sort of a thorn in his side, putting pressure on them. But I think more than anything, it's folks that we love spending time with, and then people that obviously this is an enormous cast. I think it's our biggest, one of our biggest casts we've ever done in a Disney animated film. It's like 70 something. All of those folks have to separate. They have to have individual personalities so that when we move through the story, it makes sense. Dwayne Johnson as a tiny little antelope just makes sense. You know, he finally got the part that he's been destined to play.
Speaking about Judy and Nick, I mean, the thing that I love, and I'm sure everybody loved, was seeing just how that friendship plays out and how they matter. They say how they matter to one another. Like, talk about like landing that and getting that so right, because I mean, at the end, that little scene at the end, the post-credit scene was just beautiful. But like, getting that.
Yeah, that was really, we discovered very early on that we really just, if we put them at the center, Judy and Nick and their relationship at the center, when we build around that is really what we did. And Jared, in the very, 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 very early versions of the script, we had that scene at the end where they're kind of expressing their feelings back and forth to each other. And it really, I don't think it's changed much since he first wrote it. And we like to iterate a lot at Disney Animation, but really we kept that as always the core and working towards that. And it really kind of helped form and build as long as we were building towards that, because it was such a finely written.
Don't butter him up.
Just once.
But I will say what's really fascinating about that is, for all of our films, we start hand-drawn with everything. We have a story department. They're sketching things out in black and white. Byron did an early pass on that scene, which really sort of set the tone for those characters. And that subtext that you're getting during that scene, he really set the tone for that. But then, of course, we have these amazing performances from Ginny and Jason that just knocked out of the park. I mean, I think it's some of Jason's finest work. He's so vulnerable in there, and that really surprised us in a great way. That really changed things. And then, frankly, the amount of fine-tuned acting, I think, immense credit goes out to our animators, because there's a lot of action in this movie, and that's really exciting to watch. But I will say, the character performances that you see in this film, that very tiny, subtle acting, I can't tell you how hard that is. And the fact that they make it look so easy is a testament to that work. And then during that, you're also hearing Michael Giacchino's score, which is also hitting at the perfect time. So those moments are ones where it's literally hundreds of people all working together to make that feel effortless, and I'm in awe of it.
Yeah, that's something to mention. I think some of you folks are in the industry with us and stuff, but seeing those names go by at the end, I think we all get a little bit emotional, because we're kind of like this big repertory theater at Disney Animation. We all, by and large, do everything under one roof. We work with people over and over again, sometimes from film to film. A lot of veterans, but we also work with a lot of new people. Some people who even saw the first film and then made their way into Disney Animation, and this has been the first film for them. But we have an incredible editing team. Jeremy Milton led our amazing editing team, amazing music editing group with Earl Ghaffari and then Michael Giacchino, seeing a master composer like that at work on something this big, because not everybody could do a score like this. Michael had to do probably like a dozen different styles of music and do them all great. Like he has stuff that harkens back to old Hollywood, he's got noir stuff in there, he's got jazz, he's got whatever the stuff in the reptile speakeasy is, I don't know what to call that, but there is so much variety and so much talent that we're kind of exposed to every day, and that's what keeps us going, because it's a long road. Like it takes about 4 years for us to do this, but the fact that we work with such great people who have that enthusiasm is one of the big reasons we get carried through this.
You mentioned Milton. Isn't one of your characters named Milton? Is that an Easter egg too?
The villain is named one of the villains.
I think you're the first person that's clocked that. Yeah, so Milton, our villain, is a nod to Jeremy Milton, our editor. Editors are not villains. I don't want to go on record saying that. They are great. But
Jeremy's
actually,
one of our heroes on this film.
Yeah, he was our hero. But he actually did the scratch voice of that character for 4 of the 5 years of making this movie, and not until we cast David Strathairn and he came in and put his voice on it.
It was oddly easy for Jeremy
yes,
Milton, our editor,
he
to
was
sound
very
evil.
harsh.
It was weird that he had this.
I would say he's the nicest person, so him being like, kill him, it was like, whoa, I didn't know you had that in you. But yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's literally a direct nod to Jeremy.
Speaking of villains, like Paul Burt, I mean, I really liked him, and then it was like, wait a minute, he's become the villain, but I still love him. Can you talk about like creating that character, and then, I love the Shining sequence, but can you call the Shining sequence?
Yeah, she did a great article on it. It's amazing. I'll jump in and we can all talk about it. But like one of the reasons that we asked Andy Samberg to do it is because Andy, you guys know, he plays sort of the doofy boyfriend kind of guy. He's just like a kind of a dorky friend, and he's got this sort of silly sense of humor. And so I think one of the things that actually kind of interested him about the character is how messed up Paubert is. He has this weird, cringy relationship with his dad, where there was a shot that we love where Paubert is finally like, he's standing in front of his father who's just yelled at him and stuff, and he's like, no, I was doing it for the family, for you, Daddy. And his dad is about to kind of say, well, maybe you are a Linksley after all, and the hand reaches out almost to touch Paubert's shoulder, but it doesn't quite get there before Nibbles pops in. He's like, oh, he was so close to getting that daddy love that he's been trying to get for so long. But I think that's why Andy being kind of an unexpected villain, I think that was,
I think so too. I mean, it's interesting, like Byron was mentioning earlier, we go through so many iterations. I think the first draft I wrote of this movie was probably 3.5 years ago, maybe plus. And it just changes constantly. So there's never a finished draft until the movie's done. That's you have a first draft and you have what goes into the theaters. What I found interesting about that character is we wanted to have a villain who presented himself at the end, but his personality didn't change. And that was an interesting challenge for us, because you wanted him to be this kind of lovable, awkward guy, someone who could somewhat mirror Judy's awkwardness in a social situation. Like early on, you see her not quite nailing being an undercover cop, and him also kind of being awkward at that party. There's some really kind of nice dork energy between the two of them. We didn't want him to also become an arch villain and be someone different when that changed, and that was a really fun thing to write, to be honest, because once he was like, he literally stabs her with that venom. He's like, oh, don't be mad at me. Oh, this is, it was almost like it's about him, and let me explain this. I want you to still like me, even though I'm murdering you right now in this moment. It's kind of something only Andy can pull off, and did a great job with it. I will say the other thing, research helped us so much, because lynxes are fascinating animals. That's a big reason they're in the story. So lynx. For example, obviously we have reptiles. A lynx is a cold weather animal, so reptiles and cold weather animals, those don't mix. But then you also have lynx in the natural world. 90% of their diet is rabbits. So that's a really interesting extra thing to add on top of that. And then a lynx is a feline, and a fox is a canine, so you have cats and dogs as part of that too. So there's all these extra little layers of sort of tension between these characters that was really fun to play with.
And just to add to all that, having Andy in there was great. And then we gave it to our animators, and they really found, Nathan Engelhart was our animation supervisor who led Paubert, and really found this nuance with him when all these mannerisms that he does, and this awkward and weirdness, yet this intriguingness, that it all comes through in the animation. It was really fascinating to watch.
Yvette, I have to ask you, when these two said they're going to do an homage to The Shining, what was your reaction?
really? And I probably said that probably about 10 times. Are we sure we want to do this? Are we sure? I do love The Shining, and it's one of my favorite movies, so I didn't mind it that much, but it's a big, task for our teams to build this huge hedge maze, and we've had many conversations about this hedge maze, and are we sure we want to build it? Because it's a lot of work to build it. Once we start building it, we're going to build. Yes, are we sure it's going to be in there? Are we sure? But really, because they had to build it, and then they had to build it in a way that can be deconstructed and run down by a snowcat. And it's always such a fun part of the film, and I love watching that, and I love being in an audience when people are watching it for the first time because it's such a surprise. But our team did an amazing job, just kind of the complexity of building that hedge maze, and then adding the music on with Michael and his score was just over the top.
And that is something to mention that producers have to deal with a lot of times. Like nowadays with CG movies, back in the day, when I was hired in 1940, I worked in 2D for a long time on like Pocahontas and the original Lilo and Stitch. Back in the day, if you wanted a joke, you could draw a joke, and probably an afternoon or someone could kind of paint up a background of, like, oh, that looks like the Shining Maze, and it could get done within a week. Now you have to kind of, very early on, to Yvette's point, commit to a joke, and you kind of go, this is going to be a huge amount of effort, maybe for a year, for a lot of people to team up and figure out how to do this. And another example of that is the destruction scene when the goat honeymoon lodge falls apart. Like that idea to destroy that came in later than probably we would have liked. But when that idea came in, all of our leads on the film said, okay, we gotta hold hands and decide like what breaks exactly where, or like what shots are happening. And the great thing too is if you watch our credits, there are some people at the studio called destruction leads. So kids, you can grow up to be a destruction lead at Disney Animation if you want to, but the fact that all these people have to work together to plan and make something that looks like it's happening just moment to moment, with all these huge surprises and splinters and dust and choreography, it all is very, very, it's a huge group effort that needs a lot of commitment.
Well, you did it, and the adults in the room are very grateful for that scene. The one thing I also loved was Flash. When Flash appears, I wasn't sitting in here, but how many of you applauded when Flash appeared? We love Flash. Talk about, like, how did you know, like, that was the perfect moment to bring him back and just warm our hearts? Like, what is that?
With all things, it was a road of iteration. I will say that there was a very different runner for Flash that was almost in the movie. We early on at the opening car chase, that car chase used to end with Gary actually being in the car and getting knocked down and going to a hospital. Very different version of the movie. And Nick and Judy went to go talk to him at the hospital, and they had to go through an animal maternity ward. So you get to see the way that all animals are born, some of which not great to look at. And that's where you actually saw Flash and his wife having their baby. It was the longest labor scene. It was the entire movie. You'd see it like kept on going as a runner, going back, and the baby still hadn't been born yet. It took some time. There's no way to do a Flash joke without that being minutes and minutes of screen time. And so ultimately we're like, I don't think that's it. And we're like, what else could be fun? Obviously, at the end of the first film, you see him driving very fast. And so the idea that at the perfect time, in would come Flash to save the day, felt like just like for Flash specifically, and waiting that long was kind of delicious for us.
I'm curious, what is the toughest animal to animate?
The toughest. Well, I mean, Gary was new for all of us. I think we had done traditional animation on snakes. Jungle Book has Amazing Ka, Robin Hood has Sir Hiss, but for Disney Animation CG, this is the first CG snake that we really did. We had one in Encanto, but it wasn't an acting character. But Gary was sort of a whole new challenge for our animators. Yeah.
I'd say another character that was easier. Was Joel the deer that gets strangled in the opening scene. And just so you all know, that's Byron who's voicing.
That's
Joel.
right. Yeah, that's
and
right.
He was method. I got to strangle him in the record booth to get also that performance. So I'd say
I have a video of that somewhere on my phone.
That's true.
I love it.
I mean, we've talked a lot about the characters, but also the environments. Like, Marsh Market is such a great new world to explore. Talk about coming up with that and just this world. And I don't know if any of you spotted Ariel's grotto as an Easter egg in there.
There's a lot of Easter eggs in there. I will say, what was fascinating for that location, like Byron mentioned earlier, we have to commit to these things very early because we build it. It's like building a real physical set. Obviously, it's a virtual one, but it takes months and months, over like a year and a half to build something like that. And so early on, we actually did something that we hadn't done before at Disney Animation. We had something that we called a story jam, which is basically we got all of our story artists together. Those are the artists that are basically writers, but on page, pencil to paper. All of our animators together and all of our visual development artists together. And we said, we're thinking about this location that is for animals that live both above water and below water. So it's an area that there's no human world equivalent to. We said we know that they're going to find something interesting in this place, and that at some point we're going to have to chase out of that place. But that's as much as we know. We don't know which animals are going to be there. Don't worry about what's in the story. Don't worry about what animals have been built or not built. And we spent 2 hours just spitballing, coming up with ideas. There's no wrong answers. And from that, we got hundreds and hundreds of doodles about what could possibly be there. That was really the way that we kicked that location off. You guys saw that walrus? It was sort of the boat walrus guy. That came out of one of the story jams. Someone drew that, and we're like, that's going in the movie immediately. LeMay Shea, who's one of our visual development artists, started to think about how to put these buildings together that would be modular, that you'd see above water, below water, putting conveyor belts that would take, a giant walrus or an elephant seal out of the water onto a dock. Those are just, a lot of incredibly brilliant people playing off of one another. And it was, to me, it was really exciting to see that start to, come to fruition. And then see our amazing teams that then go in and say, okay, well, now we're going to put barnacles on. We're going to put some fish scales here. Like it requires, hundreds of people. You probably have a better sense of all that. The actual number of hours put into this. It's a staggering amount of time to get that done.
Yeah, it truly is a credit to our amazing design team and our environments team who built this. It's, for everything in Zootopia, we have somewhat of for all the environments, we have somewhat of a human equivalent. We have cities, we have, deserts, but for Marsh Market, there really is no human equivalent of a town that lives above water and below water. And so it really was just, their own imagination and kind of having fun with it and saying, how would they build this world if they were building it for themselves, these animals? And so really it started from there, and then our story jam that we did, and just building on top of it. And every time that we would see the environment, we'd see it being built, there'd be more kind of things that add to this world to make it feel so real. I believe Marsh Market exists somewhere in the world that I really want to go see. I secretly want to go ride in the tubes is what I want to do. And then you mentioned Ariel's Grotto. The fun thing, there are so many signs and jokes and Easter eggs in Marsh Market alone, because our artists would just add something. Oh, let's put this in here. That we are actually, as we see the film, we are still finding them today.
To that, how, what I love about this is that it's so great to just sit in a movie theater with a community of people and just laugh, because we really need to laugh, we really need comedies. But how are you keeping that balance of comedy? You've got, Michael's score, you've got the storytelling, and making sure okay, we're not too far in the ridiculous of 2 hours of pure laughter, but we're also telling a story that is, moving things along.
Yeah, I think the best thing is that we do iterate a lot at Disney. We put this movie together over and over and over again. I think we put the first Zootopia together 13 times in different forms, and I think we did probably 6 or 7 screenings of this one. This one kind of held almost from the beginning, those ideas, those core ideas, like that scene that Yvette mentioned, the overshare. Jared wrote very early, and so that's a tent pole. We call it a tent pole because you can kind of hang a lot of the rest of the movie off of it. This is going to happen, end of Act 2. We're all going to make their story aim toward that. We need to kind of engineer how that happens. But there's a lot of, we try to be wrong early, and we try to try a lot of different ideas. Andrew Stanton from Pixar is a good friend of ours, and he always says, try to be wrong early. So we try a lot of stuff and throw it against the wall and see how that plays. And we show it to our crew. Our crew are all filmmakers as well. They have opinions about what's good and bad. And then to your point, like if we're going down a road where it's funny, but there's not enough substance, that's a problem. If it's got too much substance and it's not funny enough, that's a problem. If it feels too heavy, that's a problem there, because there is a balance, especially with a world like this. I think we have our expectations about what these movies need to be. Like there's a sense of fun. The Nick and Hop's chemistry and character has got to be core. That came up again and again when we were putting this film together. And then also just kind of like being aware that, you know, there's a social element to what we're talking about, and also just the animal facts and fun and being true to who animals are. So there's a lot of things on our wish lists when we go into this movie. But I think because we keep showing it to our own internal audience, and then when we go to, if you guys know what an audience preview is, when we go out into the world and show it to the public for the first time, that's an amazing moment for us, because then the audience is seeing largely storyboards. You know, like with this film, I think they probably saw like 75% of the film in storyboard drawing form. But we could hear from the audience what they reacted to, like that Shining moment, for example. Even when it was just drawings, I heard the adults starting to laugh. You know, like before that, you know, the shots even came up. And so there are things that will tell you from those previews, like what is really firing and what's not.
I will say something that is critical. I think something that we've always liked are those audience previews, because we get a lot of great feedback. We actually also changed our process at Disanimation to basically do those internally. Yeah, you guys may not know this. So all of our movies, it's about 700 people work on any number of our films. We have about 1,000 people in our building in Burbank. We have another 300-400 at our studio up in Vancouver. So while 700 people work on any given film, everyone watches it. So the entire building in both places watch it and gives their feedback. Our crews move from movie to movie, so it's typically the same community working on all of our films. And what we tried this time around was we basically treated our internal screenings as audience previews, and we'd ask very specific questions. We could actually track, you know, is this movie funny enough right now, or do we need to have more emotional substance? And we have like a number of different metrics we just ask people. And we really take that to heart. So we have, you know, 1,000 people saying, we think this area could be improved. I'm confused over here. This is really funny, but it's kind of getting in the way of the pacing. What can we do? And so that's a very unique process at Disney Animation, and we couldn't have done it without that.
Yeah, one last thing just over that is like one of the things the three of us try to do as leadership is are really trying to listen as much as possible. Like the best thing we could possibly do, we have a lot of brilliant people around us, is to listen to what they have to say, while at the same time trying to hold sort of the soul of what the movie needs to be in our minds, and kind of helping steer the ship like that. But it is very cooperative, and it's a balance to find that. And I think because we were also building off the first movie, because we have a certain tastes, like, you know, Encanto and the first Zootopia are indicative of kind of the way we like to tell stories and the movies that we like to go see. So that cooperation between our crew, us as leadership, and also the leaders of our different departments all has to work like that.
I can't get Zoo out of my head with Ed Sheeran and Shakira. And I'm sure all you kids are going to be dancing to it later on, and adults too. But what was the creative brief? What did you tell them about? This is what we need a song. This is what we need it to sound like.
I mean, that's the most fun thing in the world, to be honest. I mean, we had a great time working with Shakira on the first film with Try Everything. For this one, I want to say it was about 2.5 years ago. Met her in Miami. She was working on her tour that's now blowing up all around the world, like just unbelievable. She was working on the choreography for that at the time. She's like, I'm trying this new stuff out. And she goes, maybe some of that stuff could be in the movie too. We're like, great. And we talked about this moment in the movie and what this story was going to be about, this idea that together we're stronger, that it requires everyone, and that our differences are important to celebrate. And she was really excited. And in that first time, she said, you know what? I think this is a really good one for Ed Sheeran and I to team up with. And I was like, you know, that seems okay. Let's go ahead. Let's do that, team up. I will say yes to that, Shakira. Let's do that. And then the two of them and Blake Slacken, who's Ed's producing partner, also a writer. I mean, they just gave us this song it's so full of joy, you know. And I think that's something that this movie has to do. It is a celebration. If we're talking about these differences being important, you want to feel good about it. And I mean, I think their first version that came in was almost exactly what you're hearing here. Like immediately, like, oh my God, it's so good, it's so fun. But if you really parse out the lyrics are fantastic. I mean, it really is going through exactly what our movie's talking about, both on the macro level of the society and what they're going through, but also the character story of Nick and Judy. It's really, really deeply in those lyrics, and they didn't know all the ins and outs of the story, so it actually happened to marry up perfectly. The idea that it was this sort of crowd celebration was something that they infused from the very beginning.
Amazing. All right, Yvette, last question for you. I mean, Jared's kind of touched on the themes, but what are the what are the themes, and what do you want the audience to take away from Zootopia 2?
Well, first of all, we want everyone to have a good time. And you mentioned it earlier, I'm a firm believer in the theatrical experience and seeing it in a room, sitting in a dark room with people that you don't know and having this shared experience. There's something truly magical about laughing or gasping or feeling emotion together. And so I really would love for people to see it in the theater with people, But this film really ultimately is about Judy and Nick and their relationship, and they discover towards the end that, they really, see life differently. There's some things that they really view differently, and I think we all have that, and in that moment we can retreat as we're getting to know someone even better, even deeper, and we can retreat and say, oh, that person's not who I thought it was, or we can really lean in and try to understand those differences. And I think it's when we do that that we all become stronger, and we build a stronger community.
Incredible. Well, I'm going to give you some fun facts, because the film features 178 unique characters representing 67 different species, and then 697 crew members worked on Zootopia, and there's 71 voice cast members. We didn't talk about every single one of them, but Zootopia 2 is epic, and thank you so much for that incredible conversation. Thank you all for coming out on this Sunday afternoon.
Thank you.
Let's go. Zootopia's here.